WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know's on there. I want to thank you for being with us today. Holiday season is everywhere, bells of joy. We want to keep it that way. I want to thank our last show. I want to thank Joey Leggett for being with us. Children's Home, Falcon Children's Homes, great project. We continue to encourage you to participate in that. Today we're talking about something that's near and dear to everybody's heart, and we've got the Fire Chief, City of Clinton, with us, Stephen Lovette. Stephen, you got a background. It starts back in Salisbury, North Carolina. 32 years. You've been in Clinton a little over a year now, about a year and a half, going on 2 years. You've got a lot of experience in fire service. As the old saying goes, you didn't just wet your feet yesterday. They've been wet for a long time when it comes to fire service.
Yes, sir, I have. I'm very fortunate. I had the opportunity to work with the City of Salisbury beginning in 1986, followed through with the City of High Point, and then my current employer now with the City of Clinton, and I've been here about 18 and a half months and enjoying it very much so.
Well, we are probably fortunate in many ways, and I noticed in looking back at some of your credentials, in 2005 you were actually deployed with FEMA in the Gulf to help the response to Hurricane Katrina, which, as you've noticed, we have a lot of hurricane issues here in eastern North Carolina, so you got some boots on the ground experience.
I do, sir. I'm very fortunate with that. I had the opportunity to be deployed about 34 days with the United States Fire Administration Forces. They put out a call for 2,500 highly skilled, highly motivated firefighters, and I fit the criteria, and we were able to be deployed into areas. I went into Texas. Some of the guys that I was with, we managed operational centers for, my county was Brazos County, Texas, or College Station, home of Texas A&M. And we had a number of evacuees that come from New Orleans, from the Dome, into Reed Arena in College Station, Texas, and I was the operations officer for that duration after the hurricane.
Chief, how hard is it, and how do you process that mass kind of destruction? I mean, we've seen a lot of stuff here, but when you're talking about what happened there, it was so massive until it's just hard to wrap your head around it, even just looking at it from afar.
Devastating. It truly was devastation, and it was, the houses can be replaced, the cars can be replaced, the property can be replaced. It's how the devastation impacted the lives. If we can take just one simple moment and turn someone's bad day into at least a little bit of a bright day, that was a lot of self-gratification in doing that. And it was truly devastation, and working with the people had a huge impact on me and an impact on my career, and really brought to light that whole aspect of customer service. You know, we pride ourselves in Clinton Fire. That trait was already here when I got here, I'm very fortunate to say, where they really have a true customer service mindset. We're going to take care of the needs of the people that live within our district and those around us.
We're fortunate to have people like yourself and the firefighters, the volunteers we've got in this county and surrounding counties that listen to this show, and I think you really keyed in on it and hit it right on the head, and that's the idea of service and volunteerism is just beyond expectation, and we salute everybody as we go into this conversation today. I want to try to gear people up to think about some of the things that we're going to be talking about today and that you're going to be discussing with us. When it comes to fire and fire service and education, you're an educator from the sense of training people to be firefighters and professional firefighters. But the other side of that is educating the public, which we hope to do today. That piece of it becomes a little more fragile and sometimes disconnected. Tell us how some of the best things and best ways to get people to kind of say, wait a minute, I need to think about that, or I need to think about this, whether it's a fire alarm, whether it's something they're doing in their home. Some of it is, what should I say, tried and proven things.
It is.
But you see it all the time repeated, do you not?
We do, and repetition is where a lot of it goes back to. And I've got the credentials of being able to be an instructor, but the credential that really, or one of the credentials that means quite a bit to me in my heart, is the aspects of a public fire educator. You get to get out, you get to go into the schools, you get to see kids, you get to get out and hang smoke detectors. We just went through a very successful smoke detector campaign here in the city, and I'm very fortunate my guys really jumped on it, and we were able to put smoke detectors in a number of homes here in Clinton that did not have a smoke detector. And with that, I would like to say that if you have a smoke detector and you need batteries, if you provide the batteries, we'll come out, check it, we'll test it. If we don't have a smoke detector now and we're waiting for another shipment on a grant to come in, we're going to start hanging those smoke detectors again. So we make sure that we're trying to provide a safe environment for all of those citizens that we have, our customers, if you will. But that public fire educator is a huge credential that I really value, because with a good prevention program, we'll show operationally, when we put prevention out there. And it's things that can be taught to children as early as age 5 years old. There have been documented cases where 5-year-olds have been able to dial 911 upon hearing the sound of the smoke detector, and it's something that they hear in a pre-K lecture or they hear in a trip to the fire station. So all of that comes into play, learning just simple things over and over and over again. That's the reason we train on repetition.
Those are the kinds of things that sometimes resonates with people more when you look at examples. And over the past few weeks, and it's like every year we see these tragic situations where something has happened, whether it's in another state, whether it's in your own town or city or county. But it really resonates when you see firefighters that are literally killed trying to remove people from homes and that kind of thing. We just recently had one of those.
We did. In Worcester, Massachusetts, we had a lieutenant off of Ladder Company 5 who made that ultimate sacrifice as he was working with other members of his crew and working in getting members of the public evacuated from the involved apartment building. And our hearts break as a fire service. Our hearts break because we have lost one of our own.
It's tremendous when I see these things to think about that folks really go into these situations in some of the most horrific times, and that is fully engulfed fires, and they're looking for people. How hard is it to continue to recruit people to do these dangerous kinds of jobs?
In the volunteer fire service, and I'm very proud to say I was a volunteer when I moved to Clinton, so my roots are into the volunteer aspect. But the volunteer fire service now, with the lives of 2-income families, and our children are playing multiple sports, they're involved in things, we're involved in other civic organizations. A lot of your fire departments in North Carolina, and I will go as far as saying 80 to 90% of the volunteer fire departments that are still in existence, or any fire department for that matter, they were all started for one reason. Something devastating happened in that community. The volunteer fire department I grew up in Salisbury in Rowan County, was started because of a house fire at the intersection of Old Concord Road and St. Paul's Church Road. And knowing history is my hobby, but the Livengood family lost their house. And that's the reason that department was started. And you look at any fire department anywhere, it was started for that aspect of something devastating happened in that community. And it's now hard to find those people that are willing to make that dedication and make that sacrifice.
As a firefighter and fire chief, you just mentioned history, and I think it's critically important to think about that, because everybody probably listening to this show, and I know you just pointed out a case, but can remember situations in which there was lives lost, very tragic within communities. How important is it to remind ourselves of those to spur us forward to make sure that everything's in place, whether it's Christmas trees, and we'll talk about lighting shortly and that kind of thing, but how important is that piece of history? Some people say, well, I want to forget that and move on. That's good, but what about remembering the part that reminds us that maybe we could have done something different?
I'm a big checklist kind of person. I'm a planner. When I put up my Christmas decorations in my house, of course I have a trained eye, but that doesn't make me exempt. I have a checklist. How are my electrical cords put together? How is my tree? Do I have enough water if I'm having a live tree this year? Do I have enough water? Do I make sure I water it every day? Do I make sure I check it every day? Do I have other decorations that will need extension cords? Are these extension cords, are they good cords? Do they have bad spots in them? It's a checklist. Generate a checklist, put it away with your Christmas decorations, that when you pull your Christmas decorations out this year from next year, you go through and you check your lights before you put them on the tree. You check your extension cords before you start plugging them in. If you have a live tree, do we make sure that we've got a good stand that's going to hold water? Do I have a checklist of when I'm supposed to check that tree? Every single day, making sure that live tree has water.
When it comes to electrical stuff, particularly wiring and cables and cords and that kind of thing, oftentimes folks are told to look for a little tag on that says meets minimum requirements or all this kind of thing. Should we be concerned when it only meets minimum requirements?
Well, minimum requirements are just that, minimum requirements. A lot of those little yellow tags that you'll see on the drop cords, they're tested by Underwriters Laboratories. The UL, stamp of approval. Our toasters, our coffee pots, our microwaves, everything we have in our house, electronic or electricity generated, is tested by Underwriters Laboratories. Make sure you look for that UL tag, because that way you can realize that it's been tested, it's been thoroughly practiced, and put through a rigorous amount of good feedback. And whether it fails or whether it passes, it won't pass and obtain that label if it didn't meet what they're expecting it to do. But those minimum standards are just that, minimum standards. And we have to look at it, is minimum always enough?
Yeah, and I think with that said, when we come back, I want to follow through with what that means as it relates to the load that we're expecting that particular cord to handle. So the tag may be okay, but if we're expecting it to carry a heavy load, it may not be okay, and we might find a lot of heat. We'll be back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking to the Fire Chief, City of Clinton, about things you need to know that's not only going to save your property, but ultimately could save your life this holiday season. We'll be back in a moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thanks for being with us today. The name of the show is We Should Know. I'm J.W. Simmons. Always glad to see you on Tuesdays, each and every Tuesday at 2:30. We come to you with information, education, simulcast on WCLN Radio, Star Communications Cable Channel 16. There's a summation in the Sampson Weekly newspaper. We appreciate all of those outlets for carrying this information. We're talking today with the Fire Chief, City of Clinton, Mr. Chief Stephen Lovette. Chief, as we went to break, we were talking about cords, connectivity issues during the holidays. There's a lot of stuff comes out. I'm often fascinated as I go to different places and see where things come from, where they originate from. Quite frankly, a lot of stuff comes from other countries, as we all know, and we've come accustomed to that. Help us, understanding that you're not a licensed electrician, but help us understand what we should be thinking about when we plug stuff into a cord that goes to a socket that may be some distance away. What may or may not be some problematic issues?
One line of thinking, common sense. Common sense. If it doesn't look right, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't smell right, it's probably not right. If you have large decorations or even small decorations, and like you said, I'm not a licensed electrician, look on the cord and see how many volts and amps that cord is able to generate, to be able to handle safely. Look at your decorations. See how many amps it pulls, see how many volts it pulls, to see if the volts and the amps on the decoration is going to exceed what the cord is rated for, because that's that minimum rating, and make sure you stay below that. If you feel a cord and it seems to be warm, unplug it. That's the best thing to do. Always unplug them and contact a true licensed electrician. If you smell smoke or you smell something that doesn't seem to be quite right, dial 911. Call your fire department.
And don't hesitate. One of the things that I've heard you mention before, and other people that are professionals in this industry, is the speed part. How fast can you respond to something? If you put it off and say, well, maybe that'll go away, or I'll check it in the morning, maybe when I get up. That could be deadly, could it not?
It can be very deadly. It can be very deadly. Very fortunate in the city of Clinton here, we have a 5-minute response time. We can be dispatched from a dead sleep to on the scene, normally and roughly within about a 5-minute average anywhere within the city, and just about 7 minutes anywhere within our rural protection district. We're fortunate. We have 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year staffing. Now, where it gets to be a real issue, or not an issue, but just a lack of folks or lack of manpower, is with our volunteer counterparts, our volunteer brothers. You know, they're at home. They have to get up, get dressed, go outside, get in their vehicle, and then drive to the fire station, get to the fire truck, and then respond from the fire truck to the call. So if you think there's a problem, if you smell something that doesn't smell right, if you feel an electrical cord and it doesn't seem to be right, go ahead and call 911.
Double check everything when it comes to that. The next thing I wanted to kind of touch on a bit, and there's a lot now of gas logs, gas heaters in houses and those kinds of things. Talk to us a bit about the carbon monoxide detectors. I see a lot of those, and people say, well, that's kind of expensive. I don't know whether I want to do that or not.
Those carbon monoxide detectors, you can buy them. They'll range anywhere from $25 on up to $100. And there is a huge variance and a huge field of pricing. It just depends on what the carbon monoxide detector will do for what you want it to do. So we understand that there's a huge thing there. Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas that does what? It asphyxiates. It puts you to sleep. It asphyxiates. Where does it come into play? When you're probably sleeping. So with those gas logs, or if you have a wood stove or a wood stove insert and you're utilizing these for home heating, make sure you've got that good CO detector. How many people either cook with propane or cook with natural gas? You know, those are things we need to think about as well. Make provisions. That's the big thing, like I mentioned in the last segment. I'm a list maker, I'm a planner. Make provisions. If we know inclement weather is coming and we don't have an internal heat source and we are suspecting maybe a power outage, we need to start planning now for those things. You know, so those are the things we look at. But those carbon monoxide detectors, yes, they are extremely important. Yes, I have one in my home.
When I talk about a lot of these things, I've often heard people would come. In fact, I've had a number of shows on fire safety, and folks afterwards oftentimes will come in and they'll say, well, you know, I rent a home or I live in an apartment. I'm not worried about it. They're expecting the, quote, landlord to look after those things. Is this a personal issue they've got to confront and take on, and not just make the assumption that landlord is doing what he or she is supposed to do? Not that I'm sure in most cases they are, but is this a personal thing, no matter whether you rent, own, or temporary, or whatever?
I'll ask you this, JW. Who is responsible for your personal safety?
Yourself.
Exactly.
And that's a no-brainer.
Exactly.
But, you know, people still ask that question. What was he supposed to do that, or she supposed to do that?
Well, there are laws right for that, and general statute dictates different things. The use of smoke detectors and who is responsible for putting up a smoke detector. And do a little bit of research. Be an educated citizen. Yes, it is general statute. The homeowner, and it may be an apartment owner, they're responsible for making sure and maintaining they provide a safe place for you in that apartment. Now, how they maintain that's a conversation you're going to have with that landlord. But you are truly responsible for your own personal safety. We have that aspect. There's good information out there. I can provide our followers out there with good information that will get them a smoke detector, that will help them engage their landlord or their property owner in providing a good smoke detector. Those are the things that we look at. But you yourself, you're responsible for your own personal safety. I'm not going to sit here and say you need to do this or you need to do that, because we're all responsible for it.
Absolutely, and think through that process as you're going through this. The other thing that kind of comes to mind, and I've heard a number of firefighters over the years express this, when you're traveling in hotels and those kinds of things, I've heard more than one firefighter say, the first thing I look for is where the exits are, where the stairwells are, and where my room is.
Oh, yes, I'm very, very guilty of that very thing. I'll go in and going to a conference or going on vacation, I'll find the exit or the stairwell closest to my room, and knowing if I'm going to be woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I usually put a sticky note right beside the door. Either 4 or 5 with an arrow left or right. I know at 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't have to think about it because I'm in an environment I'm not used to. If I see an arrow and 4 to the left, that's the thing for me. 4 doors down to the left, I should find my emergency exit. That's what I do. And I'm not saying it will work for everybody, but look around. You are responsible for your own public or for your own safety. So take note. Just be an informed individual, be an informed citizen. Take a look around. Yeah, we're all excited about being on vacation. Yeah, we're all excited about being in a motel. Of course, we want to get out by the pool, or we want to get out to do this or enjoy the amenities. But take that 30 seconds or that minute. That might save your life.
And I think you just made a good point, too, that oftentimes on cool days or cold days, we assume, well, we really need to be concerned about fires. But there's as many fires that happen on hot days or what have you, and you just mentioned vacation, that kind of thing. You may be at a 20 or 20 floor building, and all of a sudden, if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, you don't know, you can't see.
Exactly.
And the lights is out, and you hear a bonging sound, and what do you do? But nobody thinks about that.
That's very true. I just recently went on vacation, and the group I went with always make fun of me because I'm a light guy. I like to have lights. I got a light on my keys. I took a couple of the chemical light sticks that you can buy at your local dollar store or at Walmart. You know, after Halloween, I take a couple of light sticks with me. I take a flashlight with me. That's just my thing. I take my personal safety very seriously. With some of the traveling I've done, I've been in hotels at 3 o'clock in the morning and the fire alarm go off, and you can't quite figure out where you're at or where you need to be. So I'm responsible for me, so I take care of that. So, and I make sure I do that little sticky note. But I take flashlights with me. I take just small little things with me that will help me. So.
Well, and it don't take long to know that what you're doing may sound a little bit extreme, but then when you see the things that we see each and every year, and sometimes too many times in one particular season or another season, we've got to really gravitate more to that personal responsibility.
We do. Situational awareness is what we in the fire service call it. I teach guys that are in recruit academies, maintain situational awareness. Be aware of what that house is doing. If you're on vacation, be aware of where you're at. You know, if you're going to Myrtle Beach, or you're going to Cherokee, or you're going to Boone, situational awareness. If it's Appalachian's homecoming weekend in Boone, you know it's going to be crowded. Okay? Situational awareness. Don't put yourself in a position where you have to start looking for things.
We don't want folks to be paranoid, but we want them to understand their environment is their responsibility, because even at the best response time, if it's 3 minutes, still we're talking some very, very, very bad things can happen. We're going to take another break. When we come back, I want to switch gears and kind of go into that holiday season, get folks to thinking about the big meals and the cooking that goes on. And not only that, but the fun that we see, that they're behind that scene, there's some things that can be very precocious, and I'm sure that you have seen some of those. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We're going to talk about not only the turkey and ham, but all those fixings and what happens in the kitchen. And we'll talk about that a bit and see if we can help you understand that maybe we don't need to get too focused on the dressing. We'll be back in one moment. Stay tuned.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that adds a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping home secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody trying to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. We're coming to you from Tuesday from Channel 16 TV, Star Communications, WCLN Radio. The Samson Weekly summation for those folks that like to pick up information and be able to read it as a summation. We're talking about fire safety, and believe it or not, the fire chief, City of Clinton, got an extensive background, well over 35 years involved in this business, everything from training and education of firefighters to actually doing things with FEMA and working in the Gulf and hurricanes and all kinds of things that go far beyond when we think about the holiday stuff, Chief. But we're talking now, and I want to kind of convert a little bit here to the holiday period where we see a lot of cooking, a lot of party festivities, activities going on in homes, and families are in and out. People are following traditions many times with various kinds of meals, whether it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, or even New Year's Eve as we go into that holiday. When we think about cooking issues, particularly as it relates to kitchen stuff, what are some of the things that comes to mind that not only you've seen but you're aware of that folks need to just remember that may be a problem?
Small children. Remember small children in kitchens. How many people think about turning your pots with the handles away from the front of the stove?
Absolutely.
Utilizing proper utensils to stir and to measure with. You know, those are just the simple things. Moving things away, making sure that our stoves are off, making sure that our ovens are off, cleaning them properly after we use them. I'm not the cleanest cook in the world, though I love to cook. I'm not the cleanest cook in the world. Clean up after yourself. Wipe down the stove top. If it's an oven, it needs to be clean. We don't have to do it right then, but just make sure you pay proper respect to that, keeping your utensils clean. Had a wise captain once told me a clean fire truck is a happy fire truck. Well, it goes with anything. A clean stove, well, it's a happy stove. It will work well for you. But just think about those common things. We have flyers, we have pamphlets at the fire department to help our customers work through the holidays, or just some things to jog their mind about, hey, you know, that's something I need to remember. Your brother or your sister may be bringing their new baby over to the house, making sure that we provide a safe environment for them. Or they've got toddlers now. Make sure you turn those pot handles to the inside. And you think that's just a safety. That's maybe not a cooking thing, but that hot water, it burns just like fire.
And I'm sure you've probably seen it before, some very devastating burns, and the folks up at UNC Burn Center has probably got more horrific stories that every year some of these things are repeated.
They are, very much so, very much so. One of the most repeated accidental causes that we see for structural or residential structural fires during the holidays, fried turkeys.
Wow.
Fried turkeys. People
is that the big pot of grease, or
it is? It's the big pot. I have answered calls in my career for service where the house was involved because they were trying to fry a turkey either in the kitchen or in the garage or on the wooden deck out back. You know, that common sense aspect. Move it away from the house. Make sure that you don't drop a frozen turkey into the oil. There are great videos out there. There are great flyers, safety flyers, if you're going to use it to fry a turkey. It's a great way to cook that bird, no doubt, but do it safely. Think about measuring your oil. Put your thawed turkey down in your pot that you're going to use to fry it with, and then put water into it up to the point where it's covered over, and make sure you get a good measurement of how much oil you're going to need. So we make sure that we don't fill that. You don't need to fill that pot to the top of oil to fry that turkey with.
Is it the spillage over the pot that hits the fire that gives it like almost like gasoline?
It is. Well, if you think about it, cooking oil is what? Well, it is a combustible liquid. And if you put that frozen bird or that bird down in that pot and it's too full and it spills over the top, And normally people are cooking this fried turkey with what? With propane. And it burns at a higher temperature. So now we have just thinned out the oil. We allow it to ignite a little more readily. We're putting it over the side and we're having direct flame impingement, as we call it. And that causes the ignition.
And that can be back to that speed part of getting assistance there quickly to be able to contain it. Somewhere I read in a matter of seconds, literally seconds, a full inflamed structure can occur within seconds.
Within seconds, yes. We're having, well, and I hate to get too technical or sound like a fireman, we are experiencing what we call flashover, room flashover, within 3 minutes. You figure a fire will double in size and intensity every 3 seconds. Now and it's depending upon what guidebook you're looking at, but roughly about every 3 seconds you're looking at flame size, flame intensity, and the heat generated from fire will double very quickly, very rapidly.
How important is it for cooks, and we got some great cooks, as you know, in this whole area. I mean,
yes, you do.
Wonderful cooks. How important is it for cooks to remember they need to stay in the kitchen where they're cooking? Many times I've heard folks in your position go, just keep an eye on what you're doing. And sometimes that little slip can make a difference.
Well, when the smoke detector goes off, it's not there to tell you that the biscuits are done. It's there for a reason. In holiday times, family coming over, friends coming over, of course you want to meet and greet them at the front door. You want to meet and greet them in the living room, and you want to spend time with them. The kitchen's a great place too. Keep an eye on what you're doing. That whole aspect of a little bit of common sense. If you're going to put something in the oven and you know it's got to bake for a while, make sure you check it. If you're frying chicken, you know that this is already a potential hazard. Keep an eye on it. There's nothing wrong with doing what you need to do, but always come back and check it. So we just make sure we do that.
We have a lot of folks out there, and I guess it's a good thing because there's a lot of marketing done with candles and fragrances, and it's a big business annually. What is some of the concerns that you've seen with candles that folks need to kind of back up and go, well, I know it would never happen to me, but I have maybe lit a candle and went to sleep or something. And I don't know if that's good or bad with some of the new kinds of containers, but everything has to be taken into, I guess, a capacity of what a potential of it is to do harm.
A potential event, you're exactly right. A potential event. And the thought process or the mindset of, it won't happen to me, it will. Because it doesn't have a conscience. That candle does not have a conscience. Things we need to remember. If you're going to use candles in your home during the holidays, they're great. And I'm not saying don't use them. Use them with some common sense. Make sure they're out after you're done using them. Secure them properly. Run a little water over the wick if you need to. Leave them in the sink. Make sure they are cool before you dispose of them or package them back up. And one thing I really, really, really want to hit is the use of candles with small children. Flames are what? They're very hypnotic.
Yeah, very attractive.
Very attractive. There's a lot of ooh-ah factor, as we call it. Everything is ooh-ah. It's ooh-ah factor. And children are truly mesmerized and hypnotized by that. But we make sure we have our candles an appropriate safe distance. Make sure they're not surrounded by anything. That flame will give off heat, and heat will generate and start fires. I went to a call for service at a friend of mine's house who is a sergeant with the sheriff's office in Rowan County. He lit a small candle on the deck of his log cabin and went to bed. And 3 hours later, the candle was knocked over by the wind. This was outside. He had just had his log cabin treated with a water resistancy. So we think about what we put on and where we put these open flames. If we're utilizing them inside, make sure they are a good safe distance from furnishings, from curtains, and the space heaters, and we'll get on that in just a second. Make sure that we pull space heaters away. Make sure we pull these flames away, these open candles away. They're properly disposed of after we're done using them.
And in proximity, I think a lot of folks probably haven't really thought about it, but oftentimes it's just something as simple as a paper towel, or is it close to Kleenexes, or somebody has a cold and the candle's there and they get a Kleenex and then kind of just toss it down.
Toss it down, yeah.
And it's just that quick.
It is that quick. People don't realize how rapidly a fire will start, and then again how rapidly it will advance and progress and become out of control.
We've had a number of situations over the years in this area, surrounding areas, and the area that folks are listening to this show. If you had to pick out something and say, make sure you look at this particular thing as it relates to cooking or as it relates to the holidays, what's one of those holiday tips that you would like folks to just kind of zero in on?
It's more than just a holiday tip. It's a tip that should be utilized year-round. We just changed our clocks, didn't we? We just fell back an hour. How many people changed the batteries in their smoke detectors? That is the biggest tool that protects us year-round. Change the batteries in that smoke detector. If you think the smoke detector is bad, they have a 10-year life now. If your smoke detector is more than 10 years old, buy a new one.
We're coming up to a break. I want to kind of set folks up for this. We're going to talk about space heaters. I want to talk about preventing home electrical fires. I understand that that's the leading cause of home fires year after year is electrical kinds of things, to include maybe a lot of homes that have some history, beautiful historical homes, but behind those walls there's all kinds of things that could be going on we don't know a lot about. I want to talk about that a bit, so we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We're talking with the fire chief about things that can and has saved folks' lives in the past, everything from the holiday season to electrical home fires. Stay tuned, call a friend. We'll be back in a moment.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're coming up on our last segment today. The name of the show is We Should Know. If you happen to be tuning in, we appreciate that. Also, remember, it's every Tuesday at 2:30. We come to you from Star Communications, Channel 16, Cable Channel 16, WCLN Radio, Summation Sampson Weekly Newspaper. If you have communication for us, send it our email, weshouldknowedu@gmail.com, weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. If you want to send us a card, postcard, otherwise, send it to Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. We always look forward to hearing from you. We're talking with the fire chief today, Chief Stephen Lovette. Chief, we've talked about so many different things. One of the things that is kind of amazes me, not necessarily that that I can't believe it happens, but clearly all the information says that malfunctioning of cords and wires and electrical stuff inside the walls, and what we usually assume is being great, oftentimes is the leading cause of house fires. I know you've seen your share of that.
Electrical issues, and we can, now that it's the holiday season and people are putting up holiday decorations, and we're pulling what? We're pulling more electricity and more of that into our homes. Make sure that your wiring is up to date. Call a licensed electrician. Have them check it out if there's any suggestion of doubt. And there's nothing wrong with that. Check your cords. Check your lights before you put them on your Christmas tree. Make sure that they are in good operational working order. Make sure that they're supposed to do what they're supposed to do. If the cord is warm, that would let you know that something's not quite right. If you think there's an emergency, do not hesitate. Dial 911. For example, there have been documented cases, and I've been on calls for service, where there was an electrical issue inside the walls of the house and has generated a fire. Well, we felt that spot of the wall, and we realized that the paint would get off color a little bit. Well, that's heat. That's a heat signature. If you think there's a problem, call 911. If you think it's an electrical issue, find you a good electrician. The Yellow Pages have several, and we're very fortunate. In Clinton, we have several very good licensed electricians. Let them come in and do their job. That little bit of ounce of prevention is worth that pound of cure.
Absolutely. And the other thing that strikes me with these electrical things beyond the cords and outlets, we see a lot of times this time of year when everything gets real cold, and a lot of charitable organizations now hand out electric space heaters. And that becomes problematic in many ways. I want you, if you will, kind of talk to us about that, because the idea of a space heater sounds like a great thing, and sometimes it's a life-saving thing for people. But it has to be used properly.
It has to be used properly. Make sure the first time before you even plug it in, read the instructions. Read the hazards. Read the warning labels. Don't just peruse through them and glance over them. Sit down and read them. They will be well worth your time. We suggest keeping all space heaters at a point of anywhere from 18 to 24 inches away from your walls. Keep it away, because that space heater does what? It generates heat. There are three things needed to form a fire: heat, oxygen, and a fuel substance. So now you've got a heat source. We have ambient oxygen around us, and make sure you keep it away from curtains, or you keep it away from furnishings that may be ignitable. So those are the things we need to look at.
When it comes to space heaters, are you aware of requirements that would require a space heater to be one that, for it to be operated, that has to have some kind of switch if it's turned over that it turns it off? Or is that something that's just recommended?
That goes back to the UL testing. There are space heaters out there both ways that will automatically turn off if they are knocked over. Kerosene heaters are the same way. I mean, people that we know of that heat with kerosene. You know, those are things we need to look at. Those safety switches are just incredible, and they truly are worth their weight in gold. Buying that heater that's got those safety features, as far as a true law, I don't think it's a true law. It is a suggestion. Underwriters Laboratories test those, that to make sure that they are those safety those safety catches on each heater. If you have small children, of course you want to make sure that you're providing a safe place for your children and teaching them not to play around the heater, not to put anything on top of the heater. You know, as I was growing up, it was the crayons were the big thing, to melt the crayons on top of it. So those are the things that we need to remember is maintain that good situational awareness of safety. If you're going to go out and spend the money to buy a good safety heater, make sure you've got one that has the safety features you're looking for, and read the instructions. If you receive a heater from a charitable organization, read the safety instructions. That is the big thing.
I read an article, this happened some years back, and the question would be, do you still see this happening, where folks during certain times of the year would actually bring inside the house a grill to cook on, and it may be charcoal, it may be a LP gas grill and that kind of thing. Does that actually happen now, or people?
Yes, it has. I've answered calls for service for that very thing with a house fire. In a municipality I worked in, there was a large group of people having a party during a snowstorm, and they brought in a charcoal grill into the living room to cook hamburgers and hot dogs. The power was out.
Wow.
And the grill got knocked over. And guess what happened with the charcoal briquettes, and everything went everywhere on the carpet inside the house. So yes, it does happen.
And as you pointed out, once something of that nature happens, it's literally a matter of seconds, and just a few minutes you have a fully engulfed fire. And try to get people out and to try to get that contained is all but impossible, is it not?
Very much so, very much so. And that's the reason we in the fire service, we preach the safety of smoke detectors, and we preach the aspect of having a good family escape plan. If you've got friends that are staying overnight with you, if you've got family that's traveled in from out of town, do they know your escape plan? Do they know to meet at the big elm tree out front if something would happen? Do they know to meet at the mailbox? Do they know their location? That was another thing we talked about as we were traveling or vacationing. Do you know where you're at? Do you know your location? If you're staying with family or friends, do you know their address? So in case you're the one that has to dial 911, can you give the communicator at the other end of the phone the correct address?
Yeah, just to get the directions where they can help you.
Exactly.
So when you look, and you guys have got a good relationship throughout the county, I'm always impressed with how fire departments work unilaterally with each other. With the kind of regional response that you have in place, you can be pretty much, you've got trucks that can back up people in the county and vice versa. Is that not correct?
That is correct. And a lot of that aspect is we, firefighters in Sampson County and nationwide for the most part, we take care of each other. When we are involved or engaged in a fire in the city of Clinton, I will move other departments into the city to make sure that I have fire protection for the city of Clinton. I'm charged to do that. Not only with the aspect of being the fire chief, I'm required to do that by general statute. So I have to maintain fire protection for the city of Clinton. I will move other organizations into the city of Clinton until we can get a truck freed up or till we get a truck back in service. So, and I'm very fortunate. The departments that work around me, all of the Sampson County departments, we have a very good, strong knit association where we take care of each other, and we have that aspect.
We're coming down to the last 2 or 3 minutes of the show, and I want to kind of try to get this question in. As fire chief, and you've done this for years and years, as you look at the holiday season, and particularly this time of the year for fire safety, what is the weightiest thing? What is that thing that's on your mind that concerns you the most that you may have to deal with?
The family that has just lost everything, watching their home burn, children watching their home burn, when it was a simple thing that could have been remedied if they would have just taken 5 minutes to look at it, 5 minutes to read those safety instructions, 5 minutes to change those smoke detector batteries, or at least check the smoke detector, 5 minutes to make sure that the handles are turned to the inside so the child isn't hurt, the grease isn't pulled over. Just taking that opportunity to say, hey, let's look at it. The holidays are a great time. We're all excited. Most of us are truly kids at heart. We love the Christmas parade. We love to see Santa come. But take those few minutes to stop, look, and think about what if.
And that what if part could be anything from
Exactly.
loss of life to loss of home. And that's constantly, not only in your mind, but firefighters throughout the area and throughout the, I guess, country is constantly thinking about those things. That's a heavy weight, is it not?
It is truly, and that what if, and I'm going to throw this in since we're in this last segment. It's not fire related, but it still means a lot to me. People, please don't drink and drive this holiday season. I've been to too many accidents where this has happened. Call somebody to come get you, please.
Traffic accidents is a key part of firefighting as well. So
Very
you
much
could
so.
easily have 2 or 3 trucks dispatched to a traffic accident. And
committed.
particularly as those attempts to do that kind of thing, and we see that all too often in the news, goes up every year and ramps up around the holiday season. So, and we'll probably be talking to folks a little bit more about that as the holidays come by. But I want to thank you for being with us today and taking the time. And fortunately, very blessed, you didn't get a call today and have to run out of the studio. So again, thank you for being here.
Yes, sir. My pleasure.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap up. I want to kind of ask you, if you would, to stay tuned with us each and every Tuesday as we bring you this show. If you have information or comments on shows we've had, send them to weshouldknow.edu@gmail.com. We should know edu@gmail.com. We always look forward to hearing from you. And probably a caption for the end of the show today: always stay safe and may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.